You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, I'm Joe Heath.
And I'm Toni Heath.
And I'm Ray Heath.
This is the Watch-A-Thon of Rassilon.
Usually they're singing right here.
Today we're going to be talking about the 4th episode of the 2nd series of Doctor Who, The Girl in the Fireplace, which aired May 6th, 2006.
True facts!
Joining us today is a returning guest, Ray Friesen.
Ray Heath.
Ray Heath. Yeah, Ray Heath Friesen.
I'm Ray Heath whenever I'm on your show. Because you adopted me.
Legally.
Don't adopt me illegally. That's a crime.
We thought about doing it illegally, but there's too much paperwork. You have been on our podcast before.
I have?
But you haven't been... You have, I think, 4 or 5 times. Who knows? Maybe more.
You know the exact amount and you know which episodes. Don't say who knows, your brain is in a giant spreadsheet.
I honestly don't...
You're talking to him because I don't know. I don't know how many times I've been on or what episodes I've been on.
I honestly don't know off the top of my head.
For shame, Joe.
Simply don't believe
For
that.
shame.
I know. But you haven't been on since we started doing New Who. Maybe people haven't heard you yet. So tell us who you are and what you're all about.
I'm
What's your
mysterious, and they should do their own work to figure out who I am.
Fair enough.
Fucking Google it.
People ask me when I'm on things to say what I'm up to now. And I'm like, I'm not up to shit. So, no, you don't need to plug my website. Doesn't even work.
What have you been up to in the past?
All the things I've ever done have been in the past, so hold on a second. I'm a cartoonist usually, and now I have a day job, so the cartooning is the first thing that stopped.
I will have more historical information to say about you.
You tell me who I am, so I see how much you know. This is a test for Joe.
Ray is the creator of Pirate Penguin vs. Ninja Chicken, a webcomic that was collected up by Top Shelf Comics. He also did the graphic novel adaptation of Small Gods and many successfully kickstarted comic anthologies like Cats Committing Crimes and Fairy Tales I Just Made Up and something with dinosaurs probably. Also co-wrote the novels Princess and the Pterodactyls with me and Vince and Road Trippy with me and Christine.
I want to know what happens next in Road Trippy. I don't really care what happens next in Pterodactyls.
Ray, do you know the amount of times Joe will just tell people about stuff he wrote?
Yeah.
All the time.
We will be out at a restaurant and he'll be like, yeah, my friend Ray worked on this. And I'm like, this is barely relevant to the conversation. Joe's just working it in there to brag on a friend.
So he's just a fan.
Yeah, I am a fan. Fan first, friend second.
Always.
I'm probably going to do more projects about dinosaurs. That I can confirm.
I think Ray's going to successfully recreate a dinosaur. Like Jurassic Park, but for real, and maybe with less murder.
I was going to say, I feel like we don't want that.
Less murder.
Less?
Like 50% less. Only half a lawyer.
That's a lot less murder.
I would like for it to be more or less.
Tastes great, less murder.
You'd like it to be more?
I'd like it to be more or less.
You want it to be more less?
What if it's only
Yes.
10% murder?
Okay.
10% might be an acceptable amount depending on who's getting murdered. Should we talk about Doctor Who?
Yeah, let's talk about Doctor Who.
There's new Doctor Who in a week, right?
Yeah.
Oh, shit, there is, yeah.
That's exciting. We're in a weird period of time where we're rewatching Doctor Who as a family because Wellington's into it now, and we're sort of in the Capaldi era. And we've just had the episode, which was the season finale of his first season, which was that was the episode that was on the week that Wellington was born. And I remember specifically because I was busy having him be born, not watch the episode live, which I had done for everything up to that point. So it was slightly different to my normal process. And so now we're pregnant again with a new baby on the way. And it's like, okay, so Wellington, you were born during Capaldi, and next baby you're born during Shooty. And that will always be lodged in my brain when I watch these episodes.
Aw.
Nice.
I interviewed Wellington about this episode. I wanted him to be a guest on your podcast, but also that seemed like a hassle. So I just interviewed him independently, and you guys can stitch it on at the end.
I can put it in right here.
Well, do it.
I'll edit it up a bit.
Edit it right now. I dare you, chicken.
Here we go.
Hi, we're here in the recording studio with young Wellington Emmett Friesen to discuss today's episode of Doctor Who, The Girl in the Fireplace. Wellington, how are you feeling today?
Good.
Do you like Doctor Who?
Yes.
Can you tell me in either one sentence or 12 sentences, what is Doctor Who about?
It's basically a time-traveling Time Lord. It flies around on the TARDIS and searches for problems to fix.
Does he fix the problems?
Yes.
Always?
Yes.
Always?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, sometimes.
What kind of stuff does the Doctor have?
He's got a sonic screwdriver.
Mm-hmm. You also have a sonic screwdriver, huh?
Yeah.
What color is yours?
Green, I think.
It goes green and blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just finished watching The Girl in the Fireplace, which has the 10th Doctor in it. What do you think of the 10th Doctor?
Good.
Which Doctors have you seen?
The 9th, the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th.
Okay. Do you have a favorite out of all those Doctors? You can like them all. That's allowed.
I like them all.
You like them all? Are they all the same or are they all different?
They're all different and they're in their own way.
Okay, so we're watching the 10th right now. We just finished watching The Girl in the Fireplace. Can you tell me the plot of The Girl in the Fireplace?
Well, the doctor finds this fireplace and he sees a girl in a portal something. And then he goes over to there to try and figure out what happened. And the girl said it was weeks, months, something like that.
Oh.
And then he keeps going back and forth until
Who are the bad guys?
the ticking clock robot guys
What are they trying to do?
scan her and use her for parts.
For
Right?
parts? What parts? Like her arms?
Probably stuff to make their ship go.
So how does the Doctor save the day?
He destroys the robots
How does he destroy them?
with his sonic screwdriver.
So it's like a weapon?
Yes.
Are you sure?
It's a weapon and also a tool.
Does he have a different mode of transportation in this episode than usual?
Yes.
Is it Mickey? No.
Horse?
Horse.
Horse?
Does the Doctor have a horse in this episode?
No. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Was this a good episode?
Yes.
Did you hate it?
No.
What's your favorite episode?
Everyone.
Every one of them? Even Fear Her?
Yeah.
Alright, do you have any final thoughts about the Doctor Who episode, The Girl in the Fireplace?
No.
None whatsoever.
Yes.
Are you looking forward to watching more Doctor Who?
Uh-huh.
Do you like that it's a little bit scary?
Yes.
Because you are a scare boy.
Yeah.
Alright, well, thank you for coming on my podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And back us on Patreon for bonus rewards, where you get double stuff, and it's great. Okay, bye.
Bye.
And that was that's it. That's all we need to do.
We're
Bye.
done.
He summed it up pretty
We
good.
just made Welly do the episode this week.
Yeah.
Welly's taking over now.
It's his podcast.
I want to
now.
say, I think it's interesting. This episode aired May 6th, and we're recording it on May 5th.
Shit! We should have waited a day.
We should have. All right. There was a slight summary, kinda, in Welly's recap, but I'm going to do a more official one.
He had watched it the hour previously, and he'd forgotten most of it.
So my alternate title for The Girl in the Fireplace is Pompadour in Circumstance.
Okay.
That's a pretty good title.
Thank you. The Doctor, Rose, and Mickey land on a seemingly deserted ship in the 51st century and discover a fireplace that leads to 18th century France. There they find a girl named Renette who will be the future Madame de Pompadour. She's being stalked by clockwork robots dressed in Victorian garb.
That's not Victorian garb.
What garb is it?
It's Hyperion French garb.
Okay, that then.
Okay.
The robots have been harvesting body parts to repair their broken ship. They need Renette's brain after it has matured a bit, so they've been opening time portals to various points in her life. The Doctor pops in and out of these time portals, trying to save the day, and also making out with Renette. The day is eventually saved, but it leaves the Doctor stranded in 18th century France. However, the Fireplace is still online, so he invites Renette to join him in the TARDIS. But when he goes to pick her up, he's too late and she's dead. The Doctor and Team TARDIS leave, and we learn that the ship was the SS Madame de Pompadour. And that is the girl in the fireplace.
Yeah, we did it.
So how would you rate that, other than the fact that I got the garb era wrong?
Well, it's not even just the era.
You're just
It's
really
also-
wrong, Joe.
It's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's time and place.
It's all wibbly wobbly.
Yeah.
I don't know things.
It was decent.
I like this episode. It's pretty good.
All right, let's discuss it. I want to do a little bit of a historical dive here into mine and Ray Friesen's friendship.
Do it.
Shit.
Ray Heath's friendship.
Ray, well, he hadn't been adopted at that point in time.
You're right.
Right, yeah.
Historical.
This was literally, I believe, the first time we met in person.
Hell yeah.
I came out to California, and you forced me to watch New Who stuff. We watched 3 episodes. We watched this one, we watched Blink, and we watched, oh shit, what's the traffic one with the Macra called? Gridlock. So I think this was the very first episode of New Who I watched. I think we watched this one, then Blink. Oh wait, did we watch The Doctor Dances? I don't remember.
I don't think that we watched any Eccleston. We were watching Tennant, because I was all about Tennant at that time.
Okay. So this was the first episode I saw that had Rose, that had Mickey. I knew nothing about them. I had no context for them. Straight up thought they were children.
They are.
I mean, they kind of are.
They're so much younger than us now. They're like 18, right?
Yeah, but I thought they were like teenagers, like young teenagers.
18 is teenaged.
Like young teenagers. I thought they were like school children.
Okay. 17.
Yeah.
When we were watching this for this podcast, Toni was like, you know what? I can kind of see why you thought that. Because they start off and they're all just very gung-ho and like, golly gee. And Mickey's like, oh, look, it looks so realistic. And all this stuff.
There's also no, like, because the Doctor gets to have all the romantic shenanigans in this episode, there's, like, none left for them, so that puts them again in a child space of, like, kissing, ew, yuck. Like, they don't say that, but, like, if they did, you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, and Stephen Moffat has said it's because he didn't know what happened in the last episode. So there is a bit of a disconnect between.
You probably could have solved that with a phone call.
Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect because the last episode ended with like Mickey being like, I want to go on adventures, and Rose being like, no. I don't want this to happen. But this episode they're just like, we're on an adventure. We're having lots of fun. There's like no animosity there whatsoever.
Good.
It's the first instance of Moffat just fixing something off screen. Character development that happens when we weren't looking.
Well, the reason that I showed you this, you and me are friends in general, because we met through the Douglas Adams Continuum Forum, because we were both Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans. And as Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans, like, we knew vaguely of Douglas's involvement in Doctor Who of the 70s. At that period in time, in the pre-streaming, barely DVD era, like, I recall it just being difficult to get our hands on Doctor Who, because it hadn't really showed up on TV yet. This is more like 2003, when we were, like, first starting to talk to each other online. I feel like I got from Netflix some, like, really random-ass DVDs. Like, I got City of Death. That's probably the very first Doctor Who I ever saw. And again, it's another situation where, like, there's no real, as an American of that time, there wasn't a lot of real context for the show. And, like, I figured out enough to know what was going on, but it's still kind of like, I don't entirely know what that was. Which is why when you and I were discussing Doctor Who, probably when I showed you this episode, when I had fallen for it hard, you were still doing your Joe thing of, I'm going to watch it all in order, going back to the black and white days. And I'm like, that's impossible, dude. Just watch this one. And you resisted, but I held you down and duct taped your eyeballs open. And I'm glad that I did, because I was correct.
And I only had mild incorrect ideas about what was going on.
Perfect, yeah.
Just confused about age.
Which you remain to this day. How old am I?
The 85.
I was trying to think of what your joke answer was going to be. And I thought the number 85 about a second before you said it.
It's because I know how old you feel.
Brutal and true, yes.
I kind of just went about, how old do I feel? 85.
I'm going to be really good at being old because I've already had lots of practice.
Me too. I can't wait to be old. I think I'm going to be just a dope old person.
I'm just waiting for people, like young kids, to get on my lawn so I can tell them to get off of it.
Young kids are on my lawn all the time.
I hate it when the kids get on your lawn. You're like, hey, it's not your lawn.
Don't you have your own lawn to be hanging out on?
Go back to your own goddamn yawn. I'm swearing a lot because I usually don't, so it's fun. It's fun for me.
This is a safe space.
They're good.
This is a safe space.
Safe fucking space.
A space for safe fucking. I did not take a lot of notes for this episode.
It's just
like,
a good episode. We like it.
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings and opinions.
Yeah?
You want to maybe ask me about it?
I asked generally, so go for it.
Well, so last episode, I talked a little bit about my feelings of this episode of like, that I always kind of didn't like it, strictly because, and I get stuck on weird things.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. Listen.
And then you found out you're wrong.
Yeah, I understand this about myself. It's fine.
You're very unique, and you manage to have opinions no one's ever had before.
Well, I think part of it is the same problem I had watching this episode for the first time. You lacked context.
I liked context, but also watching it coming right after school reunion. So when you mentioned that, like, oh yeah, he didn't know, I was like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. It coming after school reunion makes the doctor seem like such an ass. And granted, he is. That was the context. That was part of the context I was lacking.
Yeah. The doctor, he is a flawed.
Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of stuff that took place between the two if, like, Rose and Mickey's animosity is gone. They just went to the animosity vampire planet and had it all sucked out of them.
But the thing that irked me at the time was that school reunion is, like, all about...
Rose not wanting to be abandoned by the doctor?
Yes. And then Girl in the Fireplace.
He abandons
her. And I remember watching at the time being like, whoa, okay.
I wonder also how much of part of it is, like, not wanting to be abandoned by the doctor, which is true. But also just the general, like, not wanting to be alone. So if Rose had been alone on the spaceship, she would have fallen to pieces. But she had Mickey to boss around, so it was fine.
She does have a little bit of a reaction to it, but not the reaction I would have expected.
There was more drama to be mined from the idea of the doctor abandoning her on a space station than they chose to follow. Which I feel like that's my complaint about media a lot, is like when there's additional things that could have been done with this idea and you didn't, and now you've lost your chance.
I have a problem with ambiguity sometimes, I think. So I think I had a problem with like, well, so what's your deal if you're flirting with this other person?
Is that what's your deal, doctor flirting with Madame de Pompadour? Who are you chastising there?
Yes, yeah.
They're French, that's fine. He says that in the episode.
Like, I'm kind of on, like, Rose's side of this one of being like, what are you doing? I mean, second rewatch, that bothered me a lot less.
I will say it's a little weird that he meets this 11-year-old girl.
Okay, that's what
then the next time he meets her, they basically make out.
This is what I wanted to say. That bothered me a lot less, and I was able a lot more to just enjoy the fact that, like, it's a really well-constructed, like, fun episode. And I was able to be less like, I'm having a strong emotional reaction. Because I already had it and thought about it. And, like, was able to, like, set it aside and be like, oh yeah, there's definitely a reason why people love this episode. It's super fun. It's super well written. I'm having, like, weird reaction to, like, relationship stuff.
It does have a horse in it.
The horse is great. The horse is
better
so
when it has
good.
a horse in it. That's just... Horses are the trombones of the animals.
But yes, I was like, a new thing bothers me, and it's that Doctor Who multiple times has kind of been like, what if you fell in love with this person who you met when they were 10? And it's like, hey, no?
I think that's a Stephen Moffat thing, more than a Doctor Who thing.
I would love for it not to be a thing. It's not great. I don't understand why it's reoccurring. It just kind of squicks me. And that's all I have to say about that.
I think the thing is the Doctor being a time traveler and encountering people all over their time stream really does have to play the, like, well, they're not 10 now. Like, they probably do the same with Winston Churchill of, like, didn't I hang out with you when you were 10 and we went to go see Napoleon and set him on fire? Some shit like that. Like, he's known everybody when they were 10, probably. There's all sorts of missing adventures of the Doctor and 10-year-old Brigadier doing shit.
I mean,
You know you want to watch that.
this is the thing. Is it interesting to, like, tell a story about a time traveler who age, like, does become immaterial, right? Yes. Is it creepy if you're continually telling the story of, you're continually doing it from the angle of it being a young woman whom you are affectionate with? Yes.
And I feel like also order of meeting is important sometimes too.
Yeah, it would feel like a different story if you, like, went and met the companion when they were very young and being like, "Aw, this is, like, my friend, but they're little, how cute." Versus, like, I've met this...
Amelia Pond.
Amelia Pond's the other way around, isn't it?
No, he meets Amelia when she's a kid and then meets her when she's grown up. Same thing.
No, well, that's
First
what I'm
episode.
saying, yeah.
But that had the problem of, like, Moffat tried to make it romantic and then quickly realized, like, oh no, this should not be romantic. Abort, abort, abort.
Just as, like, a reoccurring theme, don't like it. Not a fan.
Speaking of romance, Moffat's previous episode, The Doctor Dances, dancing was a metaphor for fucking. And in this episode, Renette asks the Doctor to dance with her, and they go off
The thing
to
is,
dance.
I was gonna say, the thing isn't just that she asked them to dance, it's that we cut before they dance.
Yeah. So, my question is, did they dance, or did they dance?
They're French.
Moffat has stated that they're not fucking, they're just dancing. But,
What does he know?
I think they fucked. Just the Doctor slipped off for a quickie in the middle of all of this, trying to save the day shit. Rose and Mickey are just hanging out looking at a brain on a ship. Or no, it was a heart. It was a heart, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's gross.
I do love the, like, horror aspect of this episode. It's deeply unsettling.
Those robots are really good villains in this context because I feel like Doctor Who has a reoccurring problem of villains who their motivation is conquest. Like, that's most of the people that are up to big picture nefarious doings is conquest related. And so to have ones that are causing massive problem, not because they're trying to subjugate anybody, but just like the people having lives are in their way. I found their motivation to be very really interesting dynamic for this one.
This is also, like, one of my specifically biggest fears. Is, like...
Being harvested by robots?
No. It's difficult to explain, but, like, harm being committed by, like, an entity that doesn't understand it's committing harm. You know what I mean? Like, it's not able to...
It's not doing it maliciously.
It's not doing it maliciously. It just doesn't it's just lacking context. And I don't know why that's scarier to me, but it is. Yeah, if you don't have the emotional context to, like, understand, like, if you don't have a basic understanding of, like, human beings and you just see the world in a very, like, mechanical, like, these are parts. There's something about that really gets to me. It freaks me out.
It's probably because if somebody was doing harm to you from a place of maliciousness, you might actually have more opportunities to, like, trick them and weasel your way out of it. You know, villains like to, like, grandstand and let you know and let you, like, luxuriate in your fear or whatever it is that they're getting from you. But, like, the robots that don't understand pain, they wouldn't give you that, like, space to figure process stuff. They just go for it. It's freaky. It's a good freaky concept. Moffat is good at coming up with freaky monster concepts.
He also does that thing that he sometimes does that I like, where he sets something up and then later goes, "Hey, remember that thing that said? Here's a weird twist about it."
With the clock?
No, not with the clock is good.
Because that is a Moffat thing of, like, there's a sound and it's like, hey, there's no clock in this room. What the fuck is ticking?
Yeah, that's good.
That's something Moffat is particularly good at, of like, hey, the thing's actually been in the room with you the whole time and you did not realize it.
Yeah, that is good. That's actually a better example than the one I was going to give. But I still like how when they get there, and they first get to the ship and they're like, they smell food cooking.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, there's like some kind of like barbecue happening or whatever. And then it's later revealed, nah, that's just body parts cooking.
Yeah, that's like the
crew. That's the crew, baby.
That's the crew getting too hot in the machinery.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
It's good because, you know, they had their original reaction of like, hey, this smells great. And like, then later, as they realize, like, oh no.
That's exactly, the horror's in the context. And if you don't have the context.
This episode is an adventure in the exploration of context. The reason that I showed Joe this episode first, without any context, is I feel like this episode does a really good job of kind of doing all of the things that Doctor Who does but really cohesively instead of fragmented, the way that they sometimes, explore one particular thing. So this one is like a good, look, here's everything. And if you can't handle this, the show is not for you. But definitely overblown. And I could have set you up for problems. I wasn't really thinking ahead in that way.
I mean, I still enjoyed it when I watched it the first time.
I think I watched the whole first 2 seasons completely out of order. So everything you're just saying about the Doctor coming from having just seen Sarah Jane, my initial impression was not seeing those episodes back to back like that, not following that logic chain of events. I can do that now, but your feelings of things are still kind of locked into how you felt the first time you saw them, and definitely you see them again and you get new feelings, but your old feelings are still your default.
There's different context. You have new information.
I haven't rewatched the Sarah Jane one, but I just listened to your previous episode about the school reunion Sarah Jane Smith episode, and all of you guys talking about that made me go, oh yeah, no, that was really more important and true than I realized at the time, because I didn't know who Sarah Jane was either then. So context.
This is all about context.
This is why Joe has to watch things from the very beginning.
There's a method to my madness.
I understand that now. At the time that I made you watch this episode and you're saying I need to watch Doctor Who from order, that didn't even seem physically possible in 2006.
That's fair. Are more religious about it than necessary, for sure. And I say that from the bottom of my heart as a Catholic.
Agree to disagree. Quick Torchwood update. There is none. There's no Torchwood this episode. This is the only episode this season that does not mention Torchwood. Because I guess Moffat's I don't give a shit.
I was going to say, did he even know?
He missed out on that phone call with Russell T Davies that would have solved it. I particularly enjoy Moffat writing under Russell T Davies. I still feel like they're a really good kind of team, even if Russell can be very hands-off. With Moffat, I feel like he's hands-on with everybody, but Moffat, he'd just be I trust you, just get it done. But I think you all, and we in general have discussed this before, we're Moffat tends to write more edgy stuff, but he as a person is more optimistic. So I gotta find a way to make this work out. Where Russell tends to write more fun, happy, upbeat stuff, but then they're more fucked up because he as a person is more pessimistic. And be sometimes it just ends and everybody's dead and you don't have a magic undeath machine. Okay, bye.
It is fascinating, especially in the way that people respond to that, where it's there are people who are more of an RTD fan because they're because I'm more of a positive person, and it's well, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had that. I've been listening to your show, and you said that of people always think as 10 as being the fun one, and 9 being the drama one. And on this revisit, you're 9 is goofy as hell, and 10 is a little drama llama half the time. And it's at the time, I didn't pick up on that. And now, totally. It's weird.
I feel like that's happened throughout all of Doctor Who. I feel like a lot of people think 1 is just this grumpy old crotchety guy, but he's a fun dude too. I feel like there's just this preconceived ideas of pretty much the entire Doctor Who run.
Every Doctor and every companion has kind of got boiled down to we think this is their base essence. But Doctor Who is a show of contradictions, and I'd say every Doctor goes against whatever their base essence is at some point.
Yeah.
Which is that's the fun of the show. It's got more stuff in it than any other show.
It's bigger on the inside.
It's all the genres. It's all the, Toni said it better. That's why I made Joe watch this one again, because I feel like it's doing so many of the things the show do. I love that it was a really good period piece historical with also a bunch of sci-fi space bullshit. Because usually Doctor Who does kind of one or the other, but this one they meshed really well. Yeah. And not that they don't mesh really well in other ones, because more often than not, their historical will have some kind of sci-fi bullshit going on. But this one was 50-50 in a way that they're usually not that proportion.
Well, I feel usually the sci-fi bullshit in the historicals doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's a bunch of techno babble. It's what does that mean? Well, it means they're vampires. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting, just having the 51st century and the 18th century literally side by side.
Yeah.
You can walk from one room to the other and that's that keeps them tied together very well.
This one was, still very early on in New Who, and I hadn't watched any old Who yet. And I feel like this one, I'm probably wrong, but this was the first one that felt like used time travel as part of the story, as opposed to just like the plot device for them to get to the location of the story. And obviously Moffat would revisit that time after time because he loves using time travel as the mechanic of his story. But this was kind of the first time he got to do that, and he did it so well. Like, I love time travel just as a trope and all the different types of stuff you can do with it. So to have it be so ingrained in the meat of the story was great. I loved it.
Yeah, I think that's something that, like, Moffat is better at than any other Doctor Who writer, of playing with the concept of time and time travel and making it visceral. You could feel, you understand, like, the actual, like, feeling of, like, time not mattering in a way that, like, it usually doesn't, because it can be hard to tell stories without time.
I think that's his best insight into the Doctor as a character, is he's put so much thought into thinking about, like, what would your life feel like if you were not bound by the constraints of time? Yeah. And I think he's clearly put the most amount of thought into, like, how does that inform the Doctor's character?
I also really like that scene where Renette actually goes onto the spaceship and then hears her future.
That's the same kind of idea. They did it in Vincent and the Doctor, spoilers, at the end, where they take Vincent to go see his future. And they do that so very little on the show. Like, I feel like once they've locked down the idea, like, I just want to do that all the time. And so to do it so sparingly, but to do it so well, it's really surprising.
I do think it's difficult in that we are so bound by time, so it feels like cheating. There's like something in me that's like, well, of course you can't do that. That would be wrong.
But every time that I feel like they've done it, they don't do it just to be like, isn't that neat? It's always like an emotional...
It has to, yes.
It's an emotional beat.
Because like they could do that all the time, and they don't, and it's better for them not doing it all the time. But it always does ask the question of, like, he could do this all the time. Like, they had to do that with all the time windows to have the ending be so resonant of, like, I missed her life. I got here too late. Because, like, you're shouting at the screen, just get in the TARDIS, you idiot. Go find her a month before. And they have to, like, to keep the emotionality of the, I've missed them. You know, you have to have those linear constraints on it, even though, like, he can go see anybody at any time.
That is a good point.
I feel like they've worked that into the story in the same way that the Doctor doesn't necessarily notice when he met somebody first as kids. He seems to also, because of the fact that it's a TV show and there's limits on how they can film stuff, they've made it a part of the character of, like, he can't then continue to hang out with people once he's, like, aware that they're dead.
Yeah.
He could have gone back to see her at any point until he found out she had died. And it's kind of the same approach to other characters in the show. Like, as the 11th Doctor, he got the phone call that the Brigadier had died. And then in his head, it's like, oh shit, no more Brigadier for me. Like, he could have right before that phone call happened. But after that phone call, no.
It is the limitation of, like, this idea of being unbound by time and telling a linear story. Like, that sense of loss has to be an emotional beat, or else you can't really lose anything.
Well, it's the death doesn't work when you can just undead people.
Yeah.
I really admire Stephen Moffat. Once he took over the show, he did revisit a lot of his concepts, particularly like the Weeping Angels. Their first appearance was great, and then every subsequent appearance wasn't as great as their first appearance. You know, that it happens. But, like, good on him for resisting the urge to revisit Madame de Pompadour, because he really could have, and that would have just made this one not as good. No matter how good it would have made the neat little bow that is the end of this story just not as good. So he'd just be like, I'm staying completely away from that forever. I want to touch it, but I'm not gonna. That was some restraint from a person who doesn't often show restraint.
He definitely didn't show that restraint with Vincent Van Gogh, because he brought Vincent Van Gogh back in a later episode too. So
yeah,
with the painting of the TARDIS exploding and everything.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that fundamentally undid the ending of Vincent the Doctor, but it still was like, yeah, no longer as clean maybe as it was. I don't know. Bring them back all the time. They're great.
I was going to say, when we're talking about, like, emotional, using that sort of, like, fucking with your own timeline for an emotional beat also makes me think of Christmas Carol. Just want to put that out there.
The other thing, too, is, like, once you become aware of your future, then the question becomes, like...
If you change it, how much are you, like...
Not even that, but, like, Can I make any choices?
Yeah.
Is shit predestined?
Don't do it unless it turns out you were supposed to. It's too hard. I don't want to think this way.
Which is why you gotta avoid it unless you're in a purely emotional moment. Because if you're in at all a cerebral moment, you'll sink, you'll die. You'll get caught in questions of free will.
I mean, that's something the Doctor wrestles with even when not dealing with time travel, is like showing enough restraint to let people solve their own problems or figure it out without him, and not just be like, I'm gonna fix everything, whether people like it or not. Like, he still does that. But he could do that a lot more. Showing restraint when you have power is not easy.
I do want to talk about a behind-the-scenes thing, because I think it's very interesting. Stephen Moffat wrote a very expensive, hard-to-do thing in this episode. It was almost cut, but he pushed for it.
Was it the horse?
It was the horse jumping through the mirror.
Good choice. That scene's so important.
It's very good they spent their money on that, because it wouldn't have been as good without that. Any other way you could write him accomplishing that goal, that was so... I was just, the emotionality of the visuals just felt so right.
It's important to remember that it looks cool as shit.
You have to wrap your technobabble in something cool, or else you'd be like, wait a second. But when you do it and it's the right kind of cool, everybody's like, well, of course it worked. He was on a horse.
Right.
Do you know how they accomplished that scene?
No. Are you going to tell us?
Yes. Number one, they could not bring the horse into that room. It was not allowed on the tile floors.
Aww.
The horse was never in that room at any point. So it was green screened. That is not David Tennant on the horse. It is a stuntman with David Tennant's face pasted over it.
Okay.
The mirror is CGI.
Well, David Tennant can't get on a horse.
I guess they didn't want him to be on a leaping horse. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't want to put your actors in danger spots, or cause then the show gets ruined.
I think the mirror was either CGI or also green screened. I'm not sure. But they had to piece all of these elements together, and it was incredibly expensive and hard to do.
Worth it. So worth it.
Worth
I
it.
think it looks pretty good.
If this episode had been later in the series, they wouldn't have been able to do that. It's only because it's in the first half that they had the money for it.
They hadn't spent any yet.
If you notice, after the horse gets in the room, and it's just showing, like, David Tennant, like, winking at Renette while he's riding the horse, you do not see the horse.
He's just
faking
framed
it. Yeah.
up high.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
If they had, like, shown more horse with a CG horse, and then you're like, oh wait, that's not a real horse. Like, you can do wonderful things with just having a close-up.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if they did the whole mirror break with just a close-up? Didn't see the horse at all?
No.
That would be terrible.
I mean, I feel like you do get that special effect in other things, where, like, how can we imply this happening without actually showing it? And it does kind of suck. You have to show just the right amount.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It turns out filmmaking is hard.
This is why TV is magic. A type of magic.
What do we think about Renette? We've talked about the plot and stuff, but what do we feel about the actress who plays her?
Is she in other things?
Probably.
Yeah.
She was,
She's pretty good.
Probably.
fun fact, she dated David Tennant after this episode for a little while.
Good for her.
David Tennant
Good for him.
seems to just date his co-stars, apparently. His one-off episode guest stars.
I think he's the only actor to ever do that.
I think so.
Yeah, I can't think of any other instances.
The character is fun. I was able to like the character a lot more this time around, instead of just being like, this feels rude. Every time they interact.
Oh, yeah, that's another behind-the-scenes thing. The scene where her and Rose are talking together,
Mm-hmm.
Rose was originally supposed to be in, like, similar dress as her, so it's to, like, match the time period.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, no, that's bad. I think it's more visually interesting to have that.
To have the contrast.
Have the contrast, yeah.
I'm torn because I really like it when they get to put on the historical clothes for their historical episode. But I also like it when they just wander around in t-shirts in the past. They're both good, depending.
They're both different flavors of good.
I feel like the contrast between the two eras, that's a good part of this whole episode. It's just... Yeah. So that continues that through their clothing as well as the sets.
I also like the polyamory of it all, of like, this whole season is the 10th Doctor pining after Rose, but he like falls in love with other people while they're right there. And I feel like, well, that's kind of maybe rude. That's also like fine. Considering how much of the romance on Doctor Who at this point had been like pining, whereas I personally don't like pining very much, to just have like a pure like, wow, you're cool, let's hang out.
That's so fair.
And, like, I don't think we've said this, but, like, Madame de Pompadour was basically the king's mistress, right?
Yeah.
And she was good friends with the queen.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing that's happening. Like, the doctor's making out with Renette and still, romantically friendly with Rose. And Mickey is also there.
Mickey is also there.
That is one thing I feel like maybe they could have played with that. Maybe like there's all these like weird romantic relationships going on in this episode.
Right.
Maybe could have played up that a little bit more because you got, Mickey likes Rose. Rose likes the doctor. The doctor likes Rose and Madame de Pompadour. Madame de Pompadour's hooked up with the king and is hooking up with the doctor. There's a lot of stuff going on right there.
It's a lot for 45 minutes. Didn't have any room for Mickey.
Where does the horse fit into this?
The horse is in love with everyone.
Yeah, I'm in love with the horse. Not romantically. The horses are cool.
All right.
The horse just appearing is one of the funniest things. And it also makes me think of Dirt Gently when there's just a horse in the bathroom.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if that's the inspiration, but they're dealing with just a horse you weren't expecting should be part of more stories.
Put a horse in everything. Just randomly.
There's a horse in the hospital.
Maybe don't put a horse in everything, but like when there's an episode with a horse, you're like, oh yeah, this is the horse one. I also always like the odd episode out of whatever series. They're like, oh, what's the one that doesn't match the other ones? Yes, that one.
Yeah, so many people get weirded out by those episodes too.
I don't like things that stick to a format too hard. Like Tom and Jerry cartoons, before you even watch it, you're like, I bet I know how this is going to end. And I enjoy being surprised.
When I, using my TV tracking app, I always read the comments of what people thought about the episode. And every time there's like an episode where I'm like, oh, that was so good because it did something different. There's just so many comments of people like, what was that? That was weird. I hated that. Like there was those Ted Lasso episode.
I love that
Beard.
Ted Lasso episode, the weird one.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's so good.
Those people who hate the weird one, they only eat at chain restaurants.
We've been watching...
Well, I'm about to start using that as an insult. You
That's
sound
good.
like you eat at Chili's.
We've been watching X-Men, the animated series, and the Mojo episodes, everyone hates the Mojo episodes.
That's an incorrect opinion.
Incorrect. So
Filler episodes of cartoons are always great. Not always good, but they're always great.
No, it's nice to see something, try something new, and see what you get out of it. You can't just do the same thing over and over again, in my opinion. It's fun to experiment and play, especially when you've got a vehicle that will like allow you to do that.
I do think Doctor Who gets away with it a little bit better than most shows because it almost inherently is that. Like, everybody loves Blink, and Blink is not a typical Doctor Who episode. He's not really in it.
I really miss the Dr. Light episodes, not because I like not having the Doctor around, because the Doctor's the show, but like the Dr. Light episode always forced them to do something creative and weird.
Yeah.
And I think having limitations like that, like that's the thing that I worry about as Doctor Who's budget gets bigger and bigger, is that it relies on, like, we have the CG to do this really well, instead of the, let's come up with some bullshit that costs $1.
Yeah, we're never going to get bubble wrap monsters ever again,
Right.
probably.
That era's over.
Well, I say that, but then there was the episode where bubble wrap was the villain in the 13th Doctor era. But that was more meta commentary than a limitation. I'm surprised I remembered that because I remember very little.
The 13th Doctor era hasn't stuck in my head very well. And to be fair, like the 9th Doctor, the 10th Doctor, and the 11th Doctor, I have seen every one of their episodes like multiple times. Like between 3 and 10, depending on the episode. And then like Capaldi, I love the Capaldi era. It got off to a rough start, again, because it was fucking with my expectations. But once I figured that out, I was happy with it. But that's the period of my life where I suddenly had a kid. And like, even though I still made the time to watch the episodes, I did not make the time to watch the episodes multiple times. So now here it is 8 years later, and I'm watching most Capaldi episodes for the second time ever. And like going, oh, and it's a fun to like forget most of the thing you like and then get to watch it again.
That is the fun of this podcast, I think. Of this era of our podcast, is getting to...
familiar stuff.
Yeah, revisit these episodes that we saw maybe once or twice. But now we also have all the context of classic Doctor Who and future Doctor Who even as well.
It is very weird to be like, yeah, we're still very much like in classic Doctor Who. Like, we're still watching a version of the show that's very much like of its time.
David Tennant's such a baby. Like,
so small.
At the time,
so
I didn't
small.
think that, but now, like, we had it on earlier, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you thought Rose and Mickey were young. He's like a teenager.
I think we spent like the whole of his first appearance just saying,
Baby.
he's so small.
So baby.
Why is he so baby?
Yeah, it was a long time ago, you know, when David Tennant was the doctor, when RTD was the showrunner, when Stephen Moffat was writing an episode under RTD. We'll never see those days.
It'll never be an era like that again.
I'm excited for Boom.
It is a weird time to be doing this show.
It is.
It's always going to be a weird time for Doctor Who. Doctor Who doesn't embrace normal times.
That's so fair.
I mean, he says, like, I skip Wednesdays. I only be around on Saturdays when fun stuff's happening. Like, buy a time machine? Same.
Honestly.
Fuck Wednesdays.
No,
Except my birthday was on a Wednesday this year, so.
Did your birthday already happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Toni.
Thanks. I'm 20.
You're 20.
I'm 35.
I am so old that I have to do math every time I want to know how old I am.
Same.
I can't retain my current year age.
Talking about like how this era is now similar to the era that is currently going on. That kind of happened a lot with classic Doctor Who too.
Yeah.
It seemed like whatever we were watching, the new season was somewhat meta commentary.
Guess what? The Ice Warriors are gonna be in this. Like,
Oh, we just saw those
for real?
for the first time.
I know what those are now.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. No matter what era of Doctor Who we're in two eras at the same time, and they're oddly relevant to each
We're
other.
just very good at finding patterns.
Yeah, that's true. That's what humans do.
We're human beings. We're pattern recognizing machines.
And problem-solving machines. Like, if we don't have enough problems, we create them so we can solve them.
Yes.
No other species has invented a Rubik's Cube.
So I'm out of things to say about this episode.
I think I am too.
Tony, you have anything else you want to discuss?
I'm just thinking about Rubik's Cubes now.
All right, well then let's take a quick break and we'll be back for final thoughts. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
When Worf found out that Keiko O'Brien was having another baby.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
Blindfolded martial arts with glowy sticks.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek?
When Wei Yun said, well, time to start packing. Start it off again, Veronica.
What's the funniest thing in Star Trek? Quark killed a Klingon.
Find more on Earth Station Trek, a podcast about Star Trek.
On the ESO Network.
And we're back. Tony, do you know what time it is?
Mhm.
What time is it?
Oh, you want me to tell you?
Yes, that's why I asked you.
Yeah, here's the thing that I think is interesting.
Uh-huh.
Because you react in a particular way.
Uh-huh.
When
Correctly.
I behave in a particular way.
I react correctly to
However-
your shenanigans. Go on.
However,
Uh-huh.
you continue to set it up.
Yeah.
You continue to ask me what time it is, knowing what's going to happen afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my question is, why do you keep making this happen?
I'm trying to make you feel better.
You're trying to make me feel better?
Yeah, I want you to have at least one good thing in the podcast.
Wow. You're just going to have to move on to the next bit. I'm out.
If y'all had a new bit, what would it be?
I don't know. I don't do bits.
Yeah, Tony doesn't do bits.
Tony
I don't
doesn't
do bits. No.
Tony doesn't do bits.
I know that Tony doesn't tell jokes, but I didn't know that they didn't do bits.
I don't do jokes. I don't do bits. I don't do japes. I don't
You don't do japes?
I don't do japes. I don't.
Tony, you gotta do a jape. Come on.
I don't do tomfoolery.
Just do,
What else don't
you
I
just
do?
made me sad.
Do you do comedy?
I absolutely don't do. Here's the thing.
Have you ever done a shenanigan?
I've maybe toyed around with shenanigans before, but I try not to make a habit of it.
You gotta show restraint. You're powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I am sincere in everything I do, and that's why I'm incapable of doing bits. I might be saying something to you that sounds humorous,
Right.
but I'm not.
I've never experienced that, but go on.
It's also interesting because I've never done anything sincerely in my entire life.
I know this.
I'm eating these chips sarcastically.
I can tell.
Yeah.
That fully reads. My point is, I can't do comedy because I'm just being who I am. There's like an amount of construction in comedy.
With like jackhammers and drills.
Exactly like that. See, do you see? Ray is pretending like he doesn't understand what I'm saying.
For a bit.
For a bit.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
If I asked that, I would sincerely not know.
Okay.
Do you want to do the next part?
I was going to say, if you don't do bits, what
Yeah.
time is it?
I already told you I'm tagging out because you offended me.
It's time for final thoughts. This is the episode that I make people watch if they don't know if they like Doctor Who or not.
And sometimes that person is Joe.
Sometimes that person is Joe. I've inflicted this episode on a lot of people. Fun fact, my dad does not understand Doctor Who. It's too weird for him.
That's a bummer.
It's a bummer.
On a completely different podcast that I guested on, I mentioned Mirror Mask being my favorite movie, and I made the mistake of describing it by saying, like, I was describing what a great movie it was, and I was like, it's Jim Henson related, it's
Neil Gaiman.
But I was like, it's like weird and dreamlike, and it deals with like parental trauma. So what is there not to like? Parents listen to that podcast. Told me, yeah, we watched Mirror Mask because we didn't know it was your favorite movie. I'd never heard of it. That's what my dad said. And my mom was like, yeah, we watched it because we were like, well, because you said that like it was about how you hate your parents. And I wanted to know how I fucked up. And I was like, I don't believe that's what I said. Anyway, the takeaway where I was like, what did you guys think of the movie? And my mom was like, it was too weird.
Do your parents listen to this podcast?
No.
So it's fine for us all to say that we hate your parents. You can hate my parents, it's fine.
So did your mom turn you evil and then like have a bunch of like robots dress you?
This is what I was like, Mom, the mom in the movie like isn't even in the movie. She has cancer. She's in the hospital. And my mom goes, and yet somehow everything's still her fault.
I think she's reading that into it.
It sounds like your mom is bringing her own baggage to this party.
Feels a little bit like that to me too, but.
So was that your final thoughts?
Tony's mom, get some help. You can do it. Tony's mom, I believe in you. You got this.
Okay, so now I'm really banking on the fact that my mother won't listen to an hour-long podcast about a show she doesn't watch. The podcast that she did listen to was an interview with me.
Yeah.
And so I think that was like, it was an interview, it was about me, and it was like half an hour long. So I'm thinking like, oh, I'm on podcasts all the time, and my parents don't listen to them. Anyway, my point is, this is less accessible, so I will tell this story, and Joe, you can decide whether or not to cut it out.
Okay.
If my mom is listening, she also needs therapy.
So, Ray, was that your final thoughts?
My final thoughts is that Doctor Who is a really good show, and this is a really good episode, and I like David Tennant a lot, even though I also like all the other Doctors. He's still, like, my first one. I was really excited when he came back as the 14th Doctor, and I love Shuya Gatwa, but I wanted more David Tennant, and I just want to watch Doctor Who and eat candy all day.
Tony, what are your final thoughts?
They're pretty similar. I am glad that I rewatched this one. I am glad I rewatched it with the context of being an older person. I think I was more appreciative of, like, what a fun episode it is, the design of the robots, which is gorgeous, the horror elements that are in it, the, like, very deeply unsettling idea that, like, these robots just got the wrong idea and, like, punched a hole through the universe because of it. Like, they probably could have fixed the ship in other ways. They're just broken in a way that is terrifying. It's a good episode. I liked it, and that might be all I have to say.
I think everybody, just to interrupt and have additional final thoughts, everybody has, like, their idea of what Doctor Who is like. You know, an episode that's, like, their template episode for, like, this is the show. And for me, this is my episode that's, like, this is the show.
Is it because of how it, like, balances the humor and the horror and the...
It balances humor and horror and romance and time travel and staying put in a new time. It's balancing a lot of shit.
And it does it very well. I mean,
it does it in a way that feels very cohesive.
Doctor Who has additional episodes that are balancing lots of shit and are nowhere near as cohesive. It gets full points for that.
Yeah. For sure.
I think this, like, won a Hugo or something, so...
I could win a Hugo.
My final thoughts are similar. I really like it. It's really good. It's really fun.
You're still mad I made you watch it out of order, huh?
Yeah, a little.
You'll forgive me someday, Joe. You'll forgive me someday.
Never. No, I'm going to hold a grudge till the end of time.
Once I'm dead, you can pee on my grave, and then you'll forgive me.
I'll think about it. I mean, I will pee on your grave, but
Regardless.
I'll think about
Regardless, yeah.
Regardless. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Yeah, it does balance everything very well. It tells an emotional story. It makes you cry at the end. It's all good stuff. Good job, Stephen Moffat. I wish there was more things to complain about this episode, because I feel like that's more fun to do than just be like, that was great, wasn't it?
And that is the problem with, like, any, like, review sort of thing, where it's like, oh, being snarky is fun, and so you tend to just be snarky, and then you're like, actually, I just wanted to talk about this thing because I enjoy it.
I like liking things. That's a fun thing to do.
I learned a lot from this episode, which is mostly always bring a banana to a party.
Bananas are good.
Bananas are good. Before we go, Ray, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Listen, I'm going to do a reverse plug. Don't go to my website. You're forbidden from following me on social media. Rip up any copies of my books you have and mail them to your enemies. And don't even spell my name correctly in your thoughts.
I never do.
Good. How do you spell it?
Freezon.
Yeah, that's correct.
I spell it Neilgaiman.
Yeah, that's correct.
I'll like write to people, hey, I know my friend Ray Friesen, but I'm typing Neil Gaiman.
Oh, I see how you do it.
Well, I will do a slight plug for you, which is Buy Road Trippy. It's available
I'll do
everywhere.
a slight to-do list for you. Write the next chapter of Road Trippy.
I know.
God damn it. What happens next, Joe?
Everybody wins.
Yay! I love it. Everybody wins.
In your chapter, everybody needs to lose, though.
Oh, no. They're going to lose.
But if you liked this episode of the podcast, check out more on Watch-A-Rassilon.com. You can also find our podcast, our Patreon, and more at Linktree/Watch-A-Thon. I also want to give a special shout out to Vince and EL for providing us with our amazing theme song.
And specifically, not Ray. Thank you, Vince.
Good job, Vince.
Check out more of their music at vincentel.bandcamp.com.
If they had asked me for help with their logo when they first got started, they'd have to thank me every time, but they did it themselves, and now here we are.
And that's why it was spelt wrong for a while.
It would have been so good if I had made your logo. It would have been such a good logo.
I think we have 2 logos now. One of them was made by you and my dad, right?
We have another one?
Yeah, there's the one that Ben Padden made.
Who?
Ben Padden.
Who?
Who was supposed to be on this episode.
Who? I've never heard of them. I was at their wedding, but that's all.
But yeah, they were supposed to be on this episode, and they deserted us. So
because they're in a play?
They're in a play. How dare they? How dare they be in a play?
Ben, if you're listening to this, follow me on social media.
I also want to give a special shout out to Wellington Friesen for being a temporary guest for a little bit there.
Hey, thanks, Welly.
Does Welly have anything he would want to plug?
He's thinking about starting a YouTube channel where he plays video games.
Amazing.
When he has that, watch it. I keep being like, yeah, let's do it. And then he just kind of shrugs at me and like, I don't know how to start that. And I'm like, no one does.
No one knows what they're doing. You just fake it.
You just do it.
Until you get tons of followers and love and support and money.
Followers, support, love, and money.
Speaking of, if you love and support us,
and want to give us money,
go to our Patreon. Leave us a review on iTunes. Leave us a review on Spotify.
I have a Patreon. Do not go there.
Wait, I don't think you can leave a review on Spotify. Just rate us on Spotify.
Find out how to leave a review on Spotify and then do it.
Just start emailing Spotify talking about our podcast every day.
Dear Spotify, you're pretty good. You don't know how Shuffle works.
And tune in next time when we talk about Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. Until then, keep calm and razzle on.
Keep calm and wrestle around.
Goodbye, and I love you in a platonic, parasocial way.
Bye.
Always take a banana to a party, Rose. Bananas are good.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.